Trade rumors continue to escalate for the Toronto Maple Leafs as they are in desperate need of a forward, and some recent speculation has revealed a new Toronto Maple Leafs target that would be a perfect fit for this lineup. So to break that down in this episode and discuss what a trade package may look like. But before we do, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed, about 70% of you, make sure to hit that button. It means the world to Darius and myself. Now, Darius, there's a lot to go over today. We're obviously going to be discussing a player on the Colorado Avalanche. You may have just seen him in the intro, and you may have recognized him. Obviously, you saw him. You may have recognized him in the intro. This one and this guy has been floated around the Leafs now for the past couple of weeks. And Darius, I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are on this player. And obviously, we were originally thinking that the Leafs were going to make some free agent acquisitions to augment their forward front. But now it might come in the way of a trade, and whether that's involving Nick Robertson, whether that involves Mitch Marner, not in this specific trade, but in general, trades might be the avenue now for the Toronto Maple Leafs as a bunch of the free agency targets are off the board. And let's just dive right into it. There's been a lot of speculation. Brad Treliving should trade for Ross Colton today. And when you read between some of the lines here, you look at the contract, you look at how he obviously has the no trade clause, and there's also the fact that the Avalanche are in a very interesting cap spot right now, and some would call it hellacious. Frank Saravalli, the worst in the NHL. Makes all the sense in the world for this player. And I just want to get your thoughts on this and why it could make sense. Because the Leafs have been linked to him, not just on Twitter and things like that, but in some speculative articles as well.
Yeah, and Ross Colton has kind of come out of nowhere ever since he made the NHL. And when he won the Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm pretty sure he only joined the team on that cup run, won that Stanley Cup, and then obviously made it to the final the next year. And he was a pretty prominent player on their, roster after that, and obviously played the Leafs in both of those first round series, one where the Leafs lost and then ultimately won. So he kind of came out of nowhere. He's been a really good player at the NHL level since he's come up, right? And then obviously went to the Colorado Avalanche where he is now. And Colorado's cap situation is horrible, right? Like, it is really tough. I thought the Leafs was bad. Colorado is in tough right now. They have some great players, but they are absolutely in tough. If you look at some of those stats, they don't even have a full lineup, right? And they don't have a lot of cap space left. So they might have to move off of a player like this. The only hiccup would be, of course, like you showed, the no movement clause. And of course, the fact that he makes $4 million against the cap every year. But I think the Leafs are still going to juggle some things, some minor things. Obviously, I'm not sure Mitch Marner is going to get traded at this point. Doesn't look like that. So they're going to juggle their lineup a little bit. Someone might be on the way out. Could be David Kampf, like we mentioned. But I think with Ross Colton, he's playing third line center right now. I think the Leafs do maybe need a third line center. This could be a great option because they're not going to get top six help at this point. They don't have the money for it. But right now you have penciled in either Holmberg or Domi in the third line center position. And Domi's not a natural center. He filled in last year, but I'd like to see him on the wing. So Colton could be an interesting fit there on the third line, but they would have to shuffle some things for it to work.
Yeah, the third line, I guess, whether it's a center or forward, whatever it ends up being for the Toronto Maple Leafs, that is the big issue right now. And obviously, we made a video a couple days ago on Boone Jenner, who could make a lot of sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs in a Nick Robertson trade. Now, I want to get your thoughts on the player himself. This guy, if you're acquiring him from the Avalanche, and really the only reason that we're even discussing him, that he could be available there, is because of what you just mentioned with their brutal cap situation. They might be forced to move from young, controllable players. Granted, he has a no move clause. He would have to waive it to come to the, or no trade clause, sorry, waive it to come to the Toronto Maple Leafs at a $4 million cap hit. But he's a very solid player, about exactly a half a point a game player last season. He's 27 years of age. He would slide into that third line perfectly. And if they end up getting rid of Nick Robertson or David Kampf or both of them, like it seems like they might end up doing to change some things around, I think he would bring some well-needed help to that line and really would round out the team. And I'm just a fan of this because it's changing some things up. And I do not want to see the Leafs run it back. Obviously, it seems like at this point they're probably going to run back to core four to a degree with Mitch Marner, but other than that, I would like to see them change some things up, and whether that is Colton, whether that is Boone Jenner, one of those guys, just a change, not just the coaching staff, but the personnel as well. I think as a player, I'm a big fan of what he does, and half a point a game, pretty solid.
Yeah, and I like this player a lot, right? And like I mentioned, won a Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning and was a crucial part of their team going forward in 2022 when they made the final again against the team that he ultimately ended up with in the Colorado Avalanche, right? Half a point a game player. Like, he's a good player, right? In the role that he plays and his usage and everything like that. He's a very good player. He's getting a little bit older. The cap hit I don't know how the Leafs can make that work. They're going to have to get creative with it. There's a world where it works. Colorado, I think they would like to offset a player like this because of their cap situation, right? Or they're going to have to get creative some other way. I'm not sure how, because it's really bad when you look at it. They don't even have a full lineup, right? So I'm not sure how they're going to wiggle their way out of that one, but could be an interesting fit for the Leafs. I like how this player fits in. And like you mentioned, you're kind of just trimming around the edges again with the Leafs. Like the core four is probably not going anywhere. But if you look forward to next season, there's a lot of movement. Tavares is going to make less if he does return to the Leafs. Marner might not even be back. What do you do with that cap? So if you are to acquire a player like this year, right, it helps towards the future, I think, because this is a guy you can win with. He's a proven winner at this point, right? And has won Stanley Cup, almost had two, and obviously playing well with the Colorado Avalanche. So I'm a fan of the player himself, and I think he'd be a great fit in Toronto. Just a matter of the money.
Yeah, and we know that Brad Treliving quote, everything is on the table at the start of the offseason, and they have kind of lived up to that in the blue line front when they really changed some things around, really they were forced to do that by force, but now with the forward group changing some things up, and again, the Avs, rough spot. But I want to ask you now, Darius, and you can look at his stats here. Last season, he wasn't as good. Sorry, the season before with the Lightning, he really shined with the Colorado Avalanche, and whether that's because the Avalanche have a lot of offensive weapons. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning did as well, perennial cup winners. What do you think a deal would look like for Ross Colton? Do you think it's some sort of package surrounding a Nick Robertson, similar to the Boone Jenner package that we threw out there a couple days ago? Or do you think it's someone else, maybe David Camp in compensation, something like that? What kind of package do you think it would take to get Ross Colton away from the Avalanche, especially keeping in mind, we're going to keep hammering it home, the cap hit that he has, as well as the brutal situation that the Avalanche are in. But again, it's a pretty hefty cap hit, so you'd have to do some juggling for sure. 4 years, 16 million, which is honestly a pretty good deal if you can get him and he continues to perform at this level. But if he performs to the level that he did with the Lightning, where he's less than a half a point per game player, sorry, it gets a bit more interesting for the cap hit. You don't want to end up paying this guy $4 million a year to do lackluster things.
Yeah, and for the Leafs, if you want to move on from David Camp, like that makes sense, right? But if you're the Colorado Avalanche, a trade involving Ross Colton, like you can't take back a roster player, I don't think. So it might involve maybe a draft pick or a couple of draft picks, maybe a prospect, not like a high-end prospect. I don't think that warrants that, but like maybe a prospect or something, because it would be really tough for Colorado to take back any money at all. But maybe they take on a Nick Robertson, right? And Ross Colton can fill a need that the Leafs need as well. But the Leafs still need scoring up front too, right? It doesn't really necessarily fix a problem. It just you're just getting another player, right, for a different role. So I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, because you're like the salary cap situation makes it very difficult because they're going to be reluctant to take back a roster player. So I don't know. I think there is a world where this could work, but Brad Treliving is going to have to get really creative, and how close both teams are to the cap, it's going to be very difficult to do. But I think this guy he's a proven winner. He would look good in blue and white and in Toronto.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing to note here is that by trading Nick Robertson for Ross Colton, you're actually getting worse in the goal scoring department if you look at it, but You're getting better in other things. So then if you're getting rid of Robertson, you're going to have to find that elsewhere, because at this point, you're losing Bertuzzi, who had a great second half of the year, and Nick Robertson, who had even though he was in Keith's dog cage, a very good offensive goal scoring part of the year. But if they keep Mitch Marner, it might help even out what they've done. And you also have OEL out there to help facilitate some things in the power play. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know your thoughts on Ross Colton. What package would you give up for him when you surround it around Robertson, or would you surround it around picks, maybe David Camp? Let us know. See you soon.